Tonight, years after RAF gunner Corrie McCaig vanished on a night out, his family's nightmares are confirmed. A jury rules he was crushed to death after climbing into a bin.
You know, I've known this for 5 years, but it doesn't make it any easier. Even though you know, it doesn't make it any easier.
Also making the headlines is Campbell back on the cards. Oil giant Shell are believed to be reconsidering their decision to pull out of the project. But environmentalists say it won't tackle soaring energy bills.
In sport, we'll have the latest from the Scotland camp ahead of the friendly against Poland.
And the youngsters walking the equivalent distance from their school to Poland to raise cash for the Ukrainian war relief effort. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. An inquest has concluded that Corrie McCaig was crushed to death after climbing into an industrial bin. The RAF gunner from Dunfermline disappeared after a night out in Suffolk in 2016.
The jury at Ipswich Coroner's Court said the 23-year-old's judgment had been impaired by drinking, but the bin had ineffective locks and wasn't searched properly before being uplifted and taken to landfill. Our senior reporter Gordon Cree has been following the story since Corrie first went missing.
John, this is where Corrie was last seen after that night out in 2016. We're in the centre of Bury St Edmunds, and rather than head back to his RAF base, he came in here and chose to climb into a bin to sleep, something we heard he had done before. But tragically, on this occasion, just hours later, the bin was collected with him still inside. Now, over the last few weeks, that inquest has been taking place, and earlier today I was at the Coroner's Court when it came to an end. For Corrie McCaig's family, today has been a long time coming, and for his dad Martin, the outcome confirms what he's always believed.
You know, I've known this for 5 years, but it doesn't make it any easier. Even though you know, it doesn't make it any easier.
CCTV captured Corrie's last moments in the centre of Bury St Edmunds in September 2016. It showed him going into an area but never coming back out. The jury have concluded the 23-year-old, his judgment impaired by alcohol, climbed into an industrial bin. Inadequate locks let him get into it. Inadequate checks when it was uplifted meant he was likely crushed to death in a bin lorry before being dumped in landfill. It was more than 48 hours before he was reported missing from his base at RAF Honington, and despite extensive searches, his body was never recovered. The police inquiry was thrown off track by the weight in the bin being recorded at 11 kilos when it was ultimately found to have been more than 100 kilos. One of the purposes of an inquest like this is to see what lessons can be learned to help prevent a repeat. The coroner said it was clear there was a very high risk associated with bins and that he'd be contacting their Manufacturers Association and the operator BIFA, as well as the makers of the bin lorry, to raise his concerns about the equipment and their procedures. And for Corrie's mum, the detail of those failings is hard to bear.
And I would like to make so sure that this never happens to another family again. So if we can do anything to be able to make sure that bins do have locks on them, that you can see through windows to be able to check, that if we can do something, we will as a family.
In the years since Corrie's disappearance, there's been plenty of speculation, some lurid, some unbearable for those closest to him. Tonight, the truth is finally a matter of record. And just to add to the sadness of this case, there has been a rift between the two sides of Corrie's family, with differences of opinion about how things were handled and things that have been said over the years. But tonight, I think the final word really goes to the coroner, who said from the evidence it seems Corrie was a compassionate, caring young man living life to the full, and I sincerely hope that is how he's remembered by all of us. John.
Gordon in Bury St Edmunds. Thank you.
Environmental groups are warning that developing a new oil field off the west coast of Shetland won't tackle soaring energy bills. Shell is reported to be reconsidering its decision to pull out the Cambo project.
The energy giant previously claimed the economic case wasn't strong enough. But since the oil price has risen sharply after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Ross Governs reports.
These waters off the west coast of Shetland witness many storms, but recently they've been of the political variety, at the heart of our climate and energy debate. Amid protests and political pressure, Shell announced it was pulling out of plans to develop the Cambo oil field here. It was just weeks after the UN COP26 climate conference in Glasgow. But with war in Ukraine and an international energy crisis, there are suggestions of a rethink.
The situation has changed with respect to security of supply. So we are a significant producer, but a much bigger consumer of both gas and oil. The market situation has changed dramatically, of course, with the war in Ukraine. So the effect of that has been to have a major increase in gas prices in particular, but also in oil prices.
It's understood Shell has not yet sold its interests in the field. But without its commitment to the project, the primary partner, Siccar Point Energy, put all development on hold late last year. In withdrawing from Cambo, Shell cited regulatory and economic concerns, but there's been a huge volatility in the oil price. Then it was around $70 a barrel. It almost doubled in the intervening period and is consistently around the $100 a barrel mark.
So the scientific, the political, the public opinion remains strongly against opening Cambo or any new fields, and that hasn't changed. What has changed in the last few months is the oil price has gone up, and we're all feeling that because we feel it at the petrol pumps. We're seeing our energy bills soaring. It is suggested that Shell are looking again at this now because there's more money for them to make off this.
The UK government will outline its new energy policy next week. Despite the move to net zero, we still rely heavily on oil and gas.
We think the two are inextricably linked, and I think it's really important that, for as long as the UK continues to use oil and gas and need it, we should make sure that it's produced locally with our own jobs and our own people and our own companies.
Cambo is not going to make one jot of difference to people's energy bills. That much is clear, and the government has actually gone on the record repeatedly to say that increasing production of North Sea oil and gas in the UK is not going to make people's energy bills any more affordable. In the case of, and that's for, the fact that oil and gas, even if it's produced here, are traded internationally, and it's those international markets that are influenced by lots of other factors that end up setting the price that we pay.
Keep it in the ground. Any go-ahead for Cambo is in the hands of the UK regulator, but the debate over its future illustrates the tough decisions ahead as we try to balance the needs of our environment and economy.
Ross Governs reporting. Well, to help with soaring energy costs, the Chancellor is expected to announce he's cutting fuel duty tomorrow.
But Rishi Sunak's under pressure to go much further to help households whose energy bills could rise by up to £700 a year from April. Well, live now to our Westminster correspondent Catherine Sampson. And Catherine, MPs heard warnings today about a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, they were hearing from the economist Martin Lewis. You know him better as the money-saving expert. Now, he believes that some of the measures the Chancellor's already put in place to try and ease some of the pressure on rising costs are not nearly enough. He warned that some households could face, in his words, getting a fiscal punch in the face come April the 1st, because that's when the energy price cap, of course, will have lifted. And he was asked what he thinks the government should be doing to help.
We need to pump more money into the system, or we need a vulnerable customer price cap, which will have to be funded somehow. That means that vulnerable customers don't see these rises. The rocket science is not how we fix it. You fix it by making people's bills cheaper. It's having the political will to get that done.
And Catherine, is there the political will?
Well, look, over the weekend, Rishi Sunak says he wants to do what he can to help. He is carefully preparing his spring statement. We'll hear that in the House of Commons tomorrow. We expect there to be this fuel duty cut, but his opponents are still angry about the fact that he seems to be pushing ahead with plans to increase national insurance contributions from next month. Now, no sign that that's going to change, but perhaps we're going to see some tinkering with that. Some speculation that perhaps he tweaks the thresholds at which people start to pay it in an attempt to ease some of the pain.
All right, Catherine, we'll find out more tomorrow. Thanks very much.
In just over 6 weeks' time, Scots will head to the polls to vote in council elections. There are 1,219 seats to go for, and our political reporter Laura Alderman has been meeting some new candidates hoping to be elected.
Could you give me a couple of jumpers out of the box?
Since Audrey set up this clothing bank in Glasgow 5 years ago, she's helped more than 20,000 families in need. But what started as a deeply personal mission has now become a political one, as she's standing as a candidate in May's council elections.
I thought you had to go and do years at university for this kind of thing. Truth be told, I didn't have an interest in politics for the biggest part of my life, but I had to pay attention because political decisions determined how busy this charity would be, and it also determined what kind of things people would be coming and asking for. So I had to pay attention, and the more I paid attention, the more I had a lot to say about it.
Home Office says any...
And some candidates might look familiar.
I got into politics when I was 15 years old, challenging the First Minister.
Kurdish-born Rosa was part of the Glasgow Girls, who in 2005 campaigned to stop Home Office dawn raids and the deportation of children after her friend was forcibly removed from her home.
We did save her, and we changed laws in the UK to end child detention. And now I'm standing to be a councillor. So all the Glasgow girls are very proud of me, of course, and I'm trying to do something different and also give back to the community and represent the people and try to help as much as I can.
While some fall into politics by chance or circumstance, for others it's a childhood dream. At just 18, John is one of the youngest candidates this year.
East End born and bred. I know how people have been left behind, especially in an area like this, and I'm just hoping people will give sort of change a chance. As cliche as it sounds, we really do need it because we've been left behind by both of the major parties. Keyboard warriors are free to give me their abuse, but people in the doors are telling me different.
After moving to Scotland from Ukraine 14 years ago, Kate says events back home have only made her more determined to succeed.
It has been very difficult, and actually at times I've thought whether, it was best for me to continue considering all that's been happening. But I think that's also inspired me to keep going because I know that my family are very proud of me. They're watching the campaign. I know that I might be the first Ukrainian councillor if I'm elected, which kind of makes me really motivated to run as well.
And for other candidates, it's a now or never situation. Joe has a rare neurological disease that makes campaigning a new challenge.
Things are hard and they will get harder. There's no cure for my disease. It still gives me a drive and purpose to keep going. I may be a bit different, I may sound a bit different, I may walk a bit different, and I may have our issues, but I certainly can still be the best candidate for you and best campaigner for you.
Traditionally, council elections don't usually grab the headlines, but after a global pandemic, local services, policies and leaders have become more important than ever. Laura Alderman, STV News.
All right, let's take a look at other stories across Scotland. And NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde are urging people not to come to A&E unless they have a life-threatening or urgent condition, as hospitals are nearing capacity. The call comes as the number of patients with coronavirus in Scotland's hospitals has reached a record high for the second day in a row. The latest figures show there are 2,221 people in hospital with the virus. 29 are in intensive care.
Fire crews are tackling a blaze on Ben Lomond caused by a dropped cigarette. A 1 kilometre stretch of the hill is burning. The National Trust for Scotland say it's an area where natural regeneration of woodland was just starting to take place. They're asking people to stay away.
And singer Annie Lennox says she's truly humbled and honoured to be joining the Royal Society of Edinburgh. It awards fellowships for outstanding contributions to society. The former Eurythmics singer is Chancellor of Glasgow Caledonian University and founder of The Circle, a non-profit organisation promoting equality for women and girls. Now, it's hard to believe we could be facing water shortages in Scotland. But after a particularly dry winter, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency is warning that is exactly what could happen across the country this summer.
New data shows this January was the 7th driest on record for the east coast of Scotland and that ground levels of water are low. This morning, SEPA met farmers in Ayrshire to discuss how they can ensure they have enough water for a successful growing season. Courtney Cameron reports.
He's been ploughing these fields in Girvan for over 40 years. But last summer was the driest this farmer has seen in his lifetime. The lack of water is making it difficult to grow crops the way he used to.
Probably 30 years ago we would have turned around and just planted potatoes wherever we thought was the land was good enough. We now have to make sure that the water availability is there. It's having an effect in all farming aspects, but when you're trying to grow high value crops like we are, which are quite water hungry crops, it has to be well managed and obviously planned.
Despite several storms in February and rivers like this one looking like there's plenty of water, groundwater levels in Scotland at the moment are very low. And with even less rainfall expected over the summer, there's a warning this will put further pressure on the resources that are available. Andrew's business is one of many that are now working with SEPA to manage water supplies.
We've put better irrigation systems in place for some crops to try and reduce water wastage as much as anything else.
Scotland needs to adapt to a changing climate, and we're starting to see water scarcity events occurring more frequently. Water scarcity used to be rare in Scotland, but since 2018 we've had a water scarcity event every year since, and we're anticipating water scarcity in 2022 affecting some areas of Scotland as well, and businesses need to plan now to adapt to a changing climate.
Ahead of the summer, SEPA is encouraging any businesses looking for advice to get in touch. Courtney Cameron, STV News, Ayrshire.
As Glasgow prepares to host the World Cycling Championships next year, a cycling campaign is urging people in the city to take up the activity. With plenty of determination and practice, 2 teenagers have done exactly that. Greg Ockram has the story.
Who's the better cyclist?
Me.
1 year ago, Sean and Aidan couldn't ride a bike. Now the pair, who both live with Down syndrome, are confidently cycling after taking lessons with Freewheel North, a charity that promotes cycling for everyone.
The time and patience, I know you pay for the lessons, but by gum, the 2 guys that Aidan had must have had patience, they are saying, honestly.
And most of Sean's clubs all stopped during lockdown, and this was the one thing that kept going and kept him having to get up, get out, get dressed, get on your bike, as it were.
Definitely.
After meeting at the track on Glasgow Green, both their skills and friendship grew.
Aidan wasn't there on Thursday, and Sean was all concerned and wanted to phone and find out if Aidan was ill or if he was all okay. They helped each other through the COVID jags as well, didn't they?
Others in the city are being urged to get on the saddle too as part of the Love to Ride campaign, Ride Anywhere Week. This week is all about promoting the benefits of cycling. It's good for your mental and physical well-being, connects you with others, and of course it's good for the environment. and you can look good while doing it, some more than others.
Rather than focusing on what they can't do, we always encourage people to come down to the track and we'll focus on what they can do. So whether it is starting off on a go-kart and then moving up to a trike with 3 wheels and then maybe onto a balance bike, we've always got something for people to try.
With the weekly session coming to an end, there's one last thing the boys always look forward to.
I have my roll sausage for my lunch.
Craig Ockram, STV News.
That's given me a taste for that, I'll tell you. Now here's the sport with Raman.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Good evening to you all. COVID is likely to rule Scotland captain Andy Robertson out of this week's friendly against Poland, but he could feature for the national team next week. The fixtures will be played instead of the World Cup playoffs, which are delayed until June due to the war in Ukraine. Jamie Borthwick reports.
It was supposed to be the week where Scotland ended their 24-year wait for a place at the World Cup. Instead, with playoff opponents Ukraine subjected to conflict at home, it'll be friendlies for Steve Clarke's squad, starting with Poland at Hampden on Thursday night.
I wouldn't say there has been a dip in the feel in the mood, and I think the manager is happy and keen not to have that, because as much as it's 2 friendlies, there's so much coming up. The feeling, like you said, building up to the playoff games is going to be there in June. So everybody needs to be in the frame of mind that these games are all big, and the 2 games that are coming this week are about players staking a claim.
Andy Robertson will join up once he clears COVID protocols, while Lyndon Dykes is still receiving injury treatment at his club. Uncapped Aaron Hickey and Ross Stewart are vying to make their mark, and Craig Halkett has already discovered what a daunting environment the camp can be.
Yeah, very, very daunting, especially when KT rolled it through his legs after 30 seconds. That wasn't the introduction he was looking for, but he's been excellent.
This should have been the start of the week that would decide whether Scotland were heading to the World Cup. Instead, they'll be treating these friendlies as extra preparation, and the funds from the matches will go towards the humanitarian aid heading to Ukraine.
The fans want to come along and see us, and we've got a real good connection with the fans at the moment. They like what they're seeing, and the players are performing on the pitch. And we've got the added incentive of the charity, the £10 donation, which is fantastic to see that as well, that we're contributing towards that. So yeah, it's all in all, it's going to be a good game. We want to go and perform, and hopefully in front of a full house. That would be great.
Jamie Borthwick, STV News.
And we'll have more from the Scotland camp tomorrow. From football to boxing news, and Hannah Rankin says she's super excited to defend her world title belts for the first time in Glasgow in May. Rankin will put up her WBA and IBO super welterweight titles on the line when she takes on Mexican Alejandra Ayala at the city's Hydro. The Scot was crowned world champion last year.
Coming home as Scotland's first female world champion and getting my first title defence at home in front of a home crowd and to get a chance to showcase my skills to Scottish fans is just really special to me.
Not only are you going to be fighting, you're going to be headlining.
Yeah, exactly. A huge step forward for women's boxing, of course, and especially women's boxing in Scotland, to have a woman headlining a card, and I've got some amazing Scottish talent on the undercard.
From boxing to rugby, and Scotland women's head coach Brian Eason is looking forward to showing how far they've come when they get their Six Nations campaign underway this weekend. Eason's side will be up against England on Saturday, and after their impressive performances in the World Cup qualifiers, he's been delighted with the progress.
Some of the discipline we showed under pressure, especially the last few phases of play against Ireland, same against Spain. But then the professionalism that I suppose that we put in against Colombia, that would have been a difficult game for anybody over the last 18 months to 2 years. But I think the professionalism we showed, sticking to our systems, understanding where our strengths lie, that would be the most pleasing thing for me.
Back to football, and in the Championship tonight, Partick Thistle are away to Dunfermline. Ian McCall's side sit 4th in the table. That is all sport for me tonight, folks. I'll see you again tomorrow.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Let's go to the weather now. And here's Sean.
A cold snap is on the way. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, today's top spots have been across Ayrshire, Lanarkshire, also around Dumfries, where we've had temperatures mid to high teens. Tomorrow, though, top spots drift a wee bit further north and east, so the likes of Grangemouth, Falkirk, Motherwell, Cumbernauld, top temperatures here, 17 to 18, same also in Stirling as well. So we'll get to enjoy those higher temperatures a wee bit further north during tomorrow. Now, tonight we hang on to clear skies for many of us, and I found the overnight temperatures extremely tricky to forecast at the moment because just a few miles here and there makes all the difference between temperatures getting down to about 3 degrees and staying up at about 7 degrees. But it does certainly look as if those temperatures stay milder, 7 to 9 degrees along the west coast and the Hebrides, whilst we get the potential for a wee touch of frost further inland. Now, the risk of a few mist patches early tomorrow morning, but that clears away. It's another fine sunny day with light winds, so again feeling very warm in that sunshine, especially where we get those higher temperatures, 17 to 18 degrees Celsius. Around the west coast of Hebrides, temperatures staying that wee bit fresher for us here, 10 to 12 degrees. 12 is 54 in Fahrenheit. Now, during Thursday and Friday, we'll start to see more cloud moving in, especially across the Highlands and Argyll. And the cloud for us here could be thick enough to give us some drizzle outbreaks of rain, but we'll hang on to the best of the brighter skies across lights of Glasgow, North Lanarkshire, and also towards the Lothians. Temperatures still around 15, but slowly coming down through the weekend. Potential for much colder conditions at the start of next week.
TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, primary school pupils in Edinburgh are walking the distance from their school to the Ukrainian border in order to raise money for those affected by the war.
Tower Bank Primary in Portobello have already raised more than £3,000 for the Disasters Emergency Committee and say they want to do more to help. Ivana Holland reports.
Supporting the people of Ukraine the best way they can. The youngsters of Tower Bank Primary came up with the idea of walking the equivalent distance from Edinburgh to the Ukrainian border.
We felt so helpless watching news round and seeing what was going on when we couldn't actually help.
We've actually raised £3,068 so far, which is quite a lot in the space of a very short amount of time.
I think that more people should open out their homes if they have an extra room.
I think it must be brutal for them. 1 week just have a normal life going to school, next week having to escape their home.
P6 and 7 pupils will walk 1,800 kilometres as a group, whilst P4 and 5 will travel the distance between Kyiv and Poland, around 450 kilometres. The youngest age group will do 200k between the Ukrainian capital and a city called Smila, a place they picked because they liked the name.
I think it is very difficult for them to fully appreciate, and I suppose what we don't want to do is frighten and alarm children, and we want children to, I want children to look out of the four walls of the school and understand a bit about what's going on in the world.
Those in their final year had been learning about World War II when the invasion began. Their teachers are helping them to understand the situation.
Also just the news individually, just helping us understand what's happening.
It's not just Ukraine we want to help. There's some people in Russia who live in Ukraine who are also suffering the same fate. So we want to help them as well.
My mum has put our house, since we have a spare room, on the list for any people who don't have a home, don't have any money to come and stay.
They'll be putting their best foot forward over the next 2 weeks as they fundraise for the DEC. Ivana Holland, STV News, Edinburgh.
Oh, brilliant effort. And finally, some good news this evening. The final paperwork for the Dnipro kids has been issued, so they'll be leaving for the UK very soon. Flights are being arranged, and after landing in London, the 50 orphaned children evacuated from Ukraine will be on their way to Scotland.
That's all from us tonight. I'll be back with Scotland tonight at 10:40. Do join me. Kellyanne insists she will be watching.
I will indeed, John. And we're back again tomorrow at 6. Bye-bye.
Good night.